Next, we'd like to ask Stella Sorilla to come up.
Good afternoon. I am reluctant to be here and speak before you today. Reluctant due to the fear that a lot of us in this room have of retaliation. Reluctant due to the fact that we have been speaking out for a decade in this state to no avail and to deaf ears. Yet here we are, hoping today will be the day that our public servants do right by all Connecticut families and implement change. You have invited us here today to speak on several topics, and I will address 3 of those items. First, the failures of judiciary communication and relations can be substantially fixed with 2 concepts in family and juvenile proceedings: open court and trial by jury. Judiciary fails when there is a lack of due process, a lack of oversight, a lack of following our constitutional laws and civil rights, and collusion between judges, lawyers, AAGs, and state departments. It fails when proper motions are denied and ignored, trial proceedings are delayed, evidence is not allowed to be presented, decisions are made by one judge based on their personal opinions, and cases are discussed, decided behind closed chamber doors off the record. It is the ability of the public to be informed and hold those in charge accountable that has been overlooked. Second, the financial and emotional impact of families in juvenile court and family court can only be fixed by acknowledging fit parents and by doing what is right for children and families instead of prioritizing cash incentives and job security for those who are in these agencies. These courts have decimated marriages, incited suicides, led to homelessness, drug, and alcohol addiction. They have traumatized and caused PTSD in good, decent parents and created a new generation of children that will struggle as adults to overcome the harm they have experienced by parental separation and abuse in care. Family and juvenile courts need to simply put our existing laws and family integrity first. And lastly, how and when are children's medical information and private identities protected? The simple answer to that is they are not. Not when DCF workers feel it's acceptable to visibly wear their badges in public, during visits with the family, at doctor's appointments, and at school in front of teachers, other parents, and classmates. Not when parents whose rights have not been terminated, their requests for records are consistently denied and ignored and kept secret. Not when parents are arrested on false allegations for neglect and abuse, allowing news reporters to have public access to those criminal court proceedings. Access and privacy can only be implemented when laws regarding these issues are followed, respected, and enforced. There are many fronts that need repair, but by making these few simple changes, most others will fall in line because we will finally put importance back into the principles that guide our society. The importance of helping and supporting families, for they will forever be the backbone of our country. The importance of enforcing the laws that currently exist, and the importance of creating oversight and accountability within our agencies and public service. I thank you all for your time today.
Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony. You seem quite shaken as you speak. And how has this affected you personally?
My case is still currently ongoing. I have been separated from my children for 3 years. They have been separated from each other for 2.5 years. It has caused horrible stress on my finances, my marriage. I have already filed an intent to file a federal lawsuit. I believe that a lot of our rights are assaulted on a daily basis. Due process, hiding exculpatory evidence, a myriad of things that occur. And I'm very fearful to be here today. Retaliation is truly something that exists, and it is done in a very covert way that cannot be fought against because it is not presented as retaliation. And I fear that no matter what I have gone through, it is ultimately my children who have been traumatized for the last 3 years. And I will have to spend the rest of my life struggling to help them get over that. I've been married for 15 years to the same man. Both my children are my biological kids. I've had the same job for 20 years. I own a house and 3 cars. And I'm on the abuse registry. I can't volunteer at school. I can't volunteer at my churches. And I spend every week on supervised visits. And I spend every week going to court. And I'm not able to work because I have to be able to go and do all those things. It's a minute-to-minute struggle on a regular basis.
Thank you for being here, and I'm sorry for the circumstances that brought you here today. I wondered if you, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable any more than this already is, but if you could you give me an idea of what that covert retaliation might look like, and it doesn't have to be specific to your case. It could be.
They'll do things like when you have your attorney email with questions, they'll just ignore the questions. Like if you want to participate in a school function or a Boy Scout event, they'll just outright ignore the questions. When you request documents, like medical documents on your child being discharged from a certain program or a therapy, they won't provide you with those things. They'll bring your children late to visits. They'll have every excuse in the world for why they're late, and they won't make up the time at the end of it, so it's just your time that's short. The last meeting that I went into, they said that they're no longer providing case plans, that they're the only ones that are allowed to see the case plans. And they do a lot of stuff behind closed doors in chambers. Every time I go into court, I'm sitting in the hall for 3-4 hours, and my case is discussed and decided by people, and I have no idea what they're saying, but they're deciding.
And when you say they, who is your understanding? Who's behind the in chambers?
It's usually an appointed judge and or a clerk that's appointed, DCF, and the attorney generals, and they all go into the room. Your lawyer is allowed to attend, and they all go into the room and they discuss and decide your case, and you never get to say anything. I don't think I filed for trial to revoke commitment of my kids 1.5 years ago. I've had 3 days of trial, 3 days, and I've never been allowed to speak in that courtroom on any occasion. For case reviews, for permanency plan hearings, for anything, any of the things that they mandate I be there for, I've never been allowed to speak.
So obviously, Stella, you've said this is going on for 3 years. You have no reasonable expectation then that at any point in the near future you're going to see any resolution to this. This could go on until your kids are 16.
Well, I do have a motion filed for trial for revocation of commitment. My new dates are in April. They canceled my January dates. I did file my intent to pursue a federal lawsuit, and I am currently in a reunification. I have a court date on February 19th for them to determine whether they're going to return the kids or not prior to me going to trial.
And obviously we've heard many of these stories, but just for the record, roughly the financial burden, how much has this cost you? Because I don't think many people realize just how expensive this is.
I would say upwards of $300,000. My husband and I paid, because we were arrested for abuse and neglect. I'm on the registry. We had criminal charges. I spent the night in jail. I had to bail myself out. We had to hire 2 criminal attorneys. So I paid for 2 criminal attorneys for 1 year. I paid for 2 family court lawyers for 3 years. And every day that I don't get to work, I'm out about $300. So that's an average of about 4 days a week that I can't work between visits with the children, DCF meetings, mandatory court dates. I'm probably only working about 3 days on average. So I would say altogether, I had asked for a public defender. I was told that because I have a job, I make too much money, and because I own a house, that I have adequate assets. So my house was completely paid off. I used my annuity to pay off my house. And then what I did was I used my house as collateral, and I put my house up in order to be able to retain some of the attorneys. So I now owe about $100,000 on my current home.
I personally am very sorry for what you're going through, and it's outrageous that somebody would be bankrupt and their life would be destroyed because they're trying to have access to their children. That's not the way the system is supposed to work.
Amen.
And I've also never been arrested for anything in my 47 years of life until I was arrested for abuse and neglect.
Okay, I got a couple of questions for you. When you said that the children's, they are separate from each other, what do you mean? They are not all together, or?
I have a 6-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son. My daughter was taken when she was 2. My son was 7. They were put in separate foster homes. My son is in home number 11. My daughter is in home number 3. And they have been separated this entire time, and we did separate visits for 2 years out of the 3 years that my kids have been in custody. So I would have to do 1 visit a week with my daughter, or 2 visits a week with my daughter, and 2 visits a week with my son. And even though they go to the same school, I pay for them to go to a Catholic school in Waterbury. I pay tuition for them to go, and have paid even during the 3 years that my kids have been in state custody. I've retained paying their tuition at the school at $800 a month. And the teachers were informed by DCF to make sure that the children are kept separate. Even in school, they're not allowed to hug each other, wave to each other, or talk to each other. That just recently changed this past year when we started. We switched programs. We've been in probably about 15 programs. We've done domestic violence classes. We were put in IOP. We did parenting classes. We did non-offenders for caregivers classes, family therapy, individual therapy, marriage counseling. We did RTFT, 2 90-day sessions of RTFT. We're in like program 22 right now.
Do you pay for supervised visitation?
I do not pay for supervised visitation. Unfortunately, these poor taxpayers behind me are probably about $300 in the hole as well.
Do you
because
have
they
right?
have paid for all of those programs. They have paid for all of the supervisors. They have paid for all of the transportation for my children. They had my children living in Stamford. They had my children living in West Hartford, and they would spend every day transporting my children to school here in Waterbury.
Do you have right now legal representation?
I do. I still have a current lawyer in the juvenile family court system.
Are you dealing with a guardian ad litem right now?
I have 2 guardian ad litems. My kids each have a guardian ad litem, and my kids each have their own lawyers. It's split 50-50. My children's lawyer, for example, has only met with him once in the 3 years that he has been appointed to them. One of the guardian ad litems has been to several visits that we've had. Some are more diligent about doing their job than others. Some are more proactive about doing their jobs than others. Unfortunately, although when we were in court last time, both lawyers and both guardian ad litems expressed that the children wanted to go home, deserved to go home, and should go home, and the judge called the case child abuse, and all 5 of them said that there was nothing that they could do because DCF is the one who makes the rules, and without the availability to be able to have a trial, there is no way to reverse anybody's decisions regardless of what everybody thinks or feels.
So you said that you have a couple of complaints about abuse and neglect. Can you be specific of those charges?
There were a lot of false allegations, a lot of which that I proved were false. Like one of the allegations was educational neglect. Obviously, I don't have educational neglect if I'm paying for my kids to go to Catholic school. Another charge was medical neglect. I provided them with all the documentation that my kids were up to date with shots and physicals, and they just, what happens is they wind up making it about other things. So unfortunately, when you disprove one thing, it becomes about something else. So it becomes about the fact that my husband and I don't have a united parenting front. It becomes about the fact that, you know, my husband and I don't make adequate parenting decisions. It becomes about different things from the main reason that they took the kids, and it really is about keeping them in custody and in care as long as they possibly can, because a lot of people are getting paid, right? The transportation people, the social workers, the judges, the guardian ad litems, the lawyers, the people to supervise the visits, the therapists, all the places that they send us to go to all those classes and programs. Those are all subcontractors. They're all in the same pocket. Everybody's in the same pool of money. I wash your hand, you wash mine. I give you a referral, you give the next person a referral. It's really about cash incentives and job security.
So other than paying for the schools, do they are charging you, do you pay child support other than, no?
No.
And for how long you said that they took the kids away from
It was in January of 2016.
DCFs?
January 2016 was when they took the kids. So
16.
So we are on year number 4 right now.
And that's DCF involved in all of that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I'm real sorry that you have to go through
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you.